Capital, I'm Katie Pilbeam, and this week we'll be discussing Argentina's bid to join the BRICS, the latest in the ongoing gas price dispute between Russia and Ukraine. I went boating this week, and Tim Kirby, well, he's back in the game. Now, the BRICS, let's start there, because the BRICS may have lost some of their sparkle since their first creation back in 2001, but it's still a club that emerging economies want to join, and the latest candidate is Argentina, which would make the BRICS the BRICS. But all of the members, which include Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, must agree to its acceptance. And so far, just 3 have done this. Russia and China are yet to express their views on the matter. So what's behind Argentina wanting to join the BRICS then? What is the country's chance of entry? Well, let's ask someone who knows all about it. Economist Daniel Bruno, who's actually based in Argentina, for us. So, Daniel, tell us, why does Argentina want to join the BRICS group then?
Argentina would be interested in joining the BRICS to help resolve the challenges, the many economic challenges that Argentina is facing and usually faces. The inflation, which is about 70% right now, the crashing peso, and the dwindling reserves, the disputes with many other countries. So it's looking for some solutions.
Well, that sounds pretty nasty. Why would the BRICS countries want to have Argentina then?
Well, it's India and Brazil that have expressed interest in having Argentina join. Argentina is an agricultural power that rivals the United States and Brazil with its export capacity, especially in soy, which is a huge cash crop right now. And so they would be interested in enlarging the potential trade bloc
that makes sense. Daniel, what I want to ask you as well is, what about politics? Is that at play too in terms of getting Argentina involved to make the BRICS more of a powerful force?
I would imagine so. I would think that they would be interested in enlarging politically and economically the BRICS, which is not a trade bloc at this time. It's kind of an informal club, but they are moving towards becoming a powerful force, especially with Russia and China interested in an alternative to the United States dollar as a reserve currency and as a settlement currency. Part of it is political because, especially now because of the sanctions against Russia, which is a form of economic warfare. And so Russia has a lot of incentive, more incentive than ever, to get away from the United States dollar, and China wants to reduce its dependence on, or rather its holdings of American paper as well.
Thank you for that view. We appreciate that. All the way from Argentina, Daniel Bruno joining us today on Venture Capital. Pleasure as always. Take care. Have a great day.
Likewise, thank you.
All right, moving on then. So Ukraine will have to stick to a prepay system now for its Russian gas. From June onwards, Kiev will pay for its gas in advance. Now this, it's hoped, will stop Kiev's gas bill debts of around $3.5 billion from escalating even further. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev said that now is a time to stop mollycoddling Ukraine. Meanwhile, the EU energy chief said in Brussels this week that a provisional price for Russian gas could be negotiated with Ukraine by the end of the month. So it seems like the dispute will continue. We're going to be obviously watching all the movements as they occur. Now, we're going to stay with gas and Gazprom for now, because the company is also heading east in terms of its actual stock. Russia's gas giant is planning to get a listing in Singapore. This could happen as soon as July. As it stands, Gazprom shares are traded in Moscow, London, Berlin and Frankfurt. Russia's steel giant Severstal is reportedly preparing to sell its plants in the US, worth $1.5 billion in total. It's thought the threats of further sanctions are behind the sell-off, but according to Russian news sources, plans were already in place last year. The plants are based in Michigan and Mississippi and produced 30% of Severstal's revenues last year. Russia's largest banks, Sberbank and VTB, will now have to report their income, expenses and assets as part of an annual anti-corruption checkup. The law on combating corruption also requires all state employees, as well as their families, to report their incomes annually. Now, last week we discussed Russia's plans to create its own payment system to rival Visa and MasterCard after the sanction ban issues with the US companies. Well, now there's a new Russian law that will charge the two card giants $3 billion in security fees to continue operating in Russia. Now, these fees, according to Morgan Stanley, mean that it could be unprofitable for both Visa and MasterCard to continue working in Russia. Now, together they control 90% of the Russian payment systems market. That's a lot. Now, as well as strengthening ties with Russia, China wants to connect more closely to the rest of the world. Now, this is interesting. China is considering plans to build a high-speed railway line to the US. Now, according to Chinese media reports, the journey would begin in northeast China through Siberia, then enter a 125-mile tunnel under the Bering Strait. Now, the shortest crossing between Russia and Alaska to reach the US, that would be. The project already has a nickname. It's called the China-Russia-Canada-America line. The entire trip would take 2 days, and the train would travel at 220 miles per hour. So it means effectively in the future you could even get yourself a train from, say, London to New York, which is quite phenomenal. And Russia and China are about to make history. And this week I went on a river cruise and I spoke to Asia-Pacific diplomats while I was taking in the historical sites of Moscow. And I was asking why China is so appealing at the moment. And in terms of Russia, China, the gas deal that's coming up, is now the time for a compromise on price between the two. And this is how business is conducted here in Moscow. We're on a boat at the moment. We've got the sunshine, we've got food and drinks. It's all going on very nice indeed. This is the way to do it. But you know, serious business is happening because we've got delegates from the Asia-Pacific region, and they're all very excited because people are talking about the Russia and China trade deal. It will equate to $270 billion. It's been 10 years in the making. And what it will mean is supplying Russian gas to China for the next 30 years. Now, trade between the two countries is already way over $80 billion, and that's only set to accelerate.
Of course, Russia wants to sell its gas and the resources at the highest possible price. But because of the sanctions, because of the talks that we heard from the European partners, they may be forced to buy less of our gas, to buy more gas from the United States, to buy more LNG. And that way we need to find a partner who will be able to buy our gas long term. That's why we want to have a long contract, a 30-year contract. And this is why, at the moment, China looks very appealing to us, because they are, I think, ready to negotiate the price, because we obviously didn't want to sell our gas at the price they wanted to buy it. But now I think we're getting closer to that midpoint where we're ready to shake hands, basically, and to sign the deal.
China is the next superpower and #1 economy in the world. And it's very obvious. So everybody want to get to China. Now, there's a circumstantial thing that given the that relationship between Russia and the West is not at the best condition right now, as sanctions, Ukraine element, etc., Russia is definitely will be looking for more economical and cultural and political ties with China, which makes China more attractive to the West as well, because obviously Americans would not like to have too close relationship between Russia and China. So right now, China is like a beautiful, beautiful lady with multiple, guys trying to engage her in some long-term relationship and potentially marriage, right? So China can choose. Obviously, needless to say, that China is a very wise Asian nation, and we try to get the best out of both parties and maneuver and give a little bit to Russia, give a little bit to West. And it depends on the next steps on both sides, on Russia and the West, what actually they can get out of China and at what price.
Now, I'm delighted to say that we're going to get over to the business desk now. We've got Tim. He is back. He was on suspension for being a very naughty boy, losing money, investing on stocks that didn't even exist. It was a bit of a nightmare all round, Tim. What have you been up to? You were in a bit of trouble. What have you been up to this week?
Yeah, although I do really like the way you say naughty boy with that accent. I do have to say that I'm very thankful that you allowed me to come back on the program. And so during my suspension, we invested twice in VTB Bank, the only bank in Russia that will give me a loan, and Russia's the second largest lender. And guess what? It went up 16%. That's $2,200. And the thing that's so tragic about this is now we have enough money for me to buy a house, to put money down on a house in Russia. But the money's not mine, it's the company's. You think you can maybe talk to the bosses about that? You know,
I don't think so, Tim. I think if you got to be here a little longer. You've got to invest in stocks that exist for a little longer now on, Tim. Now come on, spin the wheel and see how you get on. And we'll see about getting you a bonus.
Let's see
or something.
what we're going to invest all of the company's money into this week. Oh, looking good, looking good. It's Gazprom.
I thought it was going to be my choice, but no. Okay.
Giant Gazprom, which loves to sponsor various soccer teams throughout the world. We're going to invest all of our money in them and see where we get next week. Looks pretty reliable to me.
All right, Tim. Well, I trust you a little bit more than last week, and I hope you had a nice holiday and all of that. We did miss you. Good luck. Gazprom seems like a solid place to put your money. We will see next week. Tim, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back as well. So Tim is back, and he's going to be holding the fort for me while I head off to China myself to follow all the latest developments in Shanghai. I'm very excited. My first time in China should be great. So I'll see you next week from Shanghai. Goodbye.